The morning sun rose over New Eden Colony like it had for the past 30 years. The golden light spread across endless fields of grain that fed 3 different star systems. Children ran through the streets laughing while their parents prepared for another day of honest work. Nobody knew this would be their last peaceful morning. Governor Marcus Reed stood on his office balcony, watching the daily routine of his people. 12,000 souls called this place home. They had built something beautiful here on Kepler 442b. Green parks, clean streets, and happy families filled every corner of their world. The colonists had turned an empty planet into a paradise. Reed was proud of what they had accomplished. When the first ships arrived 30 years ago, this world was nothing but rocks and dirt. Now their farms produced enough food to keep entire planets alive. Their children grew up under open skies instead of cramped space stations. This was what humanity was meant to do among the stars. The communication center suddenly came alive with urgent signals. Lieutenant Tom Baker rushed into Reed's office, his face pale with fear. The young officer could barely speak as he handed over the transmission data. "Sir, we have multiple contacts on the edge of the system. They're big, sir, really big." Reed looked at the scanner readings and felt his blood turn cold. 300 ships had just dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They were arranged in perfect attack formation, moving slowly toward Kepler 442b like hunting wolves. The size of the fleet made Reed's hands shake. The largest ship in the formation began broadcasting on all frequencies. The voice that came through was not human. It spoke with the cold certainty of something that had done this many times before. "Inhabitants of the human colony, I am War Admiral Vex of the Hegemony Battle Fleet. Your world now belongs to us. You have 1 solar day to surrender completely. Lay down all weapons. Disable all defenses. Prepare your population for processing. Any resistance will result in total destruction." Reed stared at the communication device as if it might explode. The Hegemony was a name that brought fear across the galaxy. 4 different alien species had joined together to conquer and enslave entire worlds. They had destroyed dozens of colonies and turned millions of beings into slaves. Now they had come for New Eden. "What about Earth?" Baker asked. "Can we call for help?" Reed thought about the distances involved. Even with their fastest ships, any message to Earth would take weeks to arrive. Help would take months to reach them, if it came at all. The Terran Federation had only a few patrol ships in this sector. Nothing that could stand against 300 warships. "Send the message anyway," Reed ordered. "Tell Earth what's happening. Here, tell them we tried to be good citizens." The hours that followed felt like years. Reed called an emergency meeting with all the town leaders. Dr. Sarah Mills, the chief medical officer, sat quietly while others argued about their options. Engineer Paul Davis wanted to fight. Teacher Lisa Green worried about the children. Everyone had opinions, but nobody had answers. "How many ships do we have for defense?" asked Mayor James Reich from the northern settlements. Reed pulled up there defense inventory on the main screen. It was not encouraging. They had 6 orbital defense platforms with old laser cannons. The surface-to-space missile sites numbered only 12. Their entire defensive force would barely scratch the paint on 1 Hegemony battleship. "We could evacuate some people," suggested Dr. Mills. "The transport ships could take maybe 2,000 to the outer system and leave 10,000 behind." Reed shook his head. "This is our home. These are our families. We don't abandon our own." As the day went on, the alien fleet moved closer. Their ships were massive things that looked like metal mountains floating in space. The smallest vessels were twice the size of any human ship the colonists had ever seen. The largest could probably hold their entire colony inside its cargo holds. Reed walked through the streets as evening approached. People were saying goodbye to each other. Some prayed in the small chapel that the colonists had built 5 years ago. Others sat quietly with their families, holding each other close. The children played games, not fully understanding why their parents looked so worried. At the communication center, more messages arrived from the Hegemony fleet. War Admiral Vex seemed amused by their silence. His broadcasts became more threatening as the deadline approached. Your resistance is pointless. Humans, we have conquered 47 worlds in the past 10 years. Your species is weak and soft. You will make excellent workers in our mining operations. Your children will serve the Hegemony for the rest of their lives. Reed wanted to answer, to tell this alien monster what he thought of threats against children. But he knew that any response would only make things worse. The Hegemony had probably dealt with defiant colonies before. They knew exactly how to break human spirits. The defense platforms powered up as darkness fell. The orbital weapons would fire when the alien ships came within range, even though everyone knew it would not matter. The colonists would not go quietly into slavery. They would fight, even if the fight was hopeless. Reed stood in the command center, surrounded by volunteers who had chosen to stay at their posts. These people could have spent their last hours with their families. Instead, they chose to defend their home until the very end. He was proud to serve with them. "Sir," called Operator Jane Foster from her station. "The Hegemony fleet is moving into attack position. They're targeting New Haven first." New Haven was the second largest city on the planet. 40,000 people lived there, including many of the families with young children. The alien admiral was going to make an example of them. He would turn the entire city into ash to show the rest of the colony what resistance would cost. Reed opened the colony-wide communication channel. His voice carried to every building, every farm, and every home on the planet. "People of New Eden Colony, in a few minutes, the enemy will attack our world. We cannot stop them, but we can show them what it means to be human. We do not kneel to bullies. We do not abandon our neighbors. We stand together, no matter what comes." The countdown timer on the main screen showed 30 minutes until the deadline expired. 30 minutes until the Hegemony would begin their demonstration of power. Reed looked at the faces around him and saw no fear, only determination. Outside, the first alien ships moved into bombardment range. Their massive guns began to charge with deadly energy. Soon, the killing would begin, and nobody was coming to save them. The timer continued its steady countdown toward 0. The countdown timer hit 0 with a soft beep that sounded like a death sentence. War Admiral Vex watched the numbers disappear from his command screen and smiled with satisfaction. Another human colony would learn the price of defiance. He had done this 47 times before, and it never got old. "Target the city called New Haven," Vex ordered his weapons officer. "Full plasma bombardment. I want nothing left but glass and memories." The massive guns on his flagship began to glow with deadly energy. Each cannon was the size of a building, capable of melting entire city blocks in seconds. The other ships in his fleet powered up their weapons as well. This demonstration would be visible from orbit, a bright flash that would break the spirit of every human on the planet. "Charging complete, War Admiral," reported the weapons officer. "Ready to fire." "On your command." Vex savored the moment. Soon, 40,000 humans would be dead, and the rest of the colony would beg for mercy. Their resistance would crumble like all the others before them. The Hegemony always won in the end. "Fire," Vex commanded. The plasma cannons unleashed their fury toward the planet below. Streams of superheated energy raced through space, carrying enough destruction to vaporize mountains. The shots would reach New Haven in less than a minute, turning the city and everyone in it into atomic dust. But something impossible happened. Space itself began to tear open around the Hegemony fleet. Blue light cracked through reality like broken glass, and from these tears came ships that should not exist. They were massive beyond belief, larger than anything Vex had ever seen. Their hulls gleamed like polished steel, and they moved with the grace of hunting sharks, the lead ship positioned itself directly between the plasma bombardment and the planet. The energy beams that could destroy cities hit its shields and simply disappeared, absorbed without even a flicker of effort. More ships poured through the space tiers, surrounding the hegemony fleet in seconds. Vex stared at his screens in total shock. Where had these ships come from? The humans were supposed to be weak, with only a few patrol vessels in their entire fleet. These were warships that belonged in nightmares, not in reality. A communication signal cut through all hegemony frequencies. The voice that spoke was calm, controlled, and absolutely terrifying in its certainty. Hegemony forces, this is Captain James Cole of the Terran Defense Fleet, vessel HMS Defiant. You have threatened civilians under Earth's protection. You have exactly 1 minute to withdraw from this system or be destroyed. This is your only warning. Vex looked at his fleet status display. He still had 280 ships against maybe 50 human vessels. The odds were still in his favor, even if these ships were larger than expected. Numbers always won in space combat. Unknown human vessels, Vex broadcast back. You are outnumbered nearly 6-1. Your bravery is admirable but pointless. Withdraw now, and we will allow you to live. The response came immediately, and Vex could hear amusement in the human captain's voice. Admiral, you seem to be confused about who has the advantage here. Let me clarify the situation for you. What happened next defied everything Vex knew about space warfare. The human ships didn't charge forward in a desperate attack. They didn't try to ram his vessels or sacrifice themselves for glory. Instead, they simply vanished. The entire human fleet disappeared from the sensors as if it had never existed. For a moment, Vex thought they had retreated through their strange space tiers. Then his ships began exploding. The humans were everywhere and nowhere at once. They appeared behind hegemony formations, unleashed devastating weapons fire, and vanished again before return fire could reach them. Their weapons didn't just destroy ships, they completely unmade them, reducing matter to its basic particles. Report! Vex shouted at his sensor officer. Sir, they're using some kind of phase technology. They exist outside normal space until they attack. Our weapons can't lock onto them. A hegemony cruiser to Vex's left simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, firing desperately at shadows. The next moment, it was expanding gas and debris. No explosion, no fire, just nothing where a ship used to be. All ships, random evasive patterns, Vex ordered. Focus fire on their last known positions. It was useless. The human ships moved like ghosts, appearing long enough to destroy another vessel before fading back into whatever dimension they came from. Vex watched his perfect formation dissolve into chaos as captains broke ranks to avoid the invisible death stalking them. On the planet's surface, Governor Reed stared at his tactical display in wonder. The sky above New Eden was filled with burning wreckage as alien ships died by the dozen. Explosions lit up the darkness like fireworks, each one marking another enemy vessel destroyed. Sir, Lieutenant Baker called out, we're receiving a transmission from the fleet commander. The main screen activated to show a woman in a crisp military uniform. She had the bearing of someone born to command, and her eyes held the cold calculation of a professional warrior. When she spoke, Reed felt safer than he had in days. Citizens of New Eden Colony, this is Admiral Sarah Hawks of the Terran Defense Fleet. You are under the protection of Earth's Navy. No enemy vessel will reach your world. We apologize for the delay in our response. Reed found his voice with difficulty. Admiral, how did you get here so fast? We only sent the distress call this morning. Admiral Hawks smiled grimly. Governor, we've been watching this system for weeks. The moment the hegemony fleet entered your space, we began moving. Earth protects its own. Back in space, The battle continued with brutal efficiency. War Admiral Vex had lost over half his fleet in less than 20 minutes. His proud armada was being carved apart by an enemy he couldn't even see coming. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were dying like insects. War Admiral, his communications officer reported, "We're receiving surrender requests from 17 ships. They want permission to retreat." Vex wanted to order them to fight, to die, with honor rather than run like cowards. But as he watched another squadron of his vessels disappear in blue fire, he realized the truth. This wasn't a battle anymore. It was an execution. "All ships," he broadcast, "emergency jump to hyperspace. Retreat to Rally Point 7. We need to warn the Hegemony Council about these new human capabilities." But even retreat proved difficult. Human ships appeared around vessels trying to escape, herding them like sheepdogs. Some aliens made it to hyperspace. Others found their jump drives mysteriously failing at critical moments. As the surviving Hegemony ships fled the system, Admiral Hawks opened communications with Governor Reed once more. "Governor, the immediate threat has been neutralized. However, I should inform you that this attack represents a declaration of war against the Terran Federation. We will be responding accordingly." Reed felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. "What does that mean, Admiral?" Hawk's smile was sharp as a blade. "It means the Hegemony just learned that humanity doesn't simply defend, Governor. We hunt." The space battle above New Eden Colony continued with terrifying precision. What had started as a Hegemony invasion was now becoming their worst nightmare. Human ships moved through space like deadly phantoms, appearing and disappearing at will, while alien vessels died around them. War Admiral Vex tried to understand what was happening to his fleet. His sensors showed impossible readings. Human ships were phasing in and out of normal space, using technology that broke every rule of physics. He knew they would materialize behind his formations, unleash devastating firepower, and vanish before his gunners could target them. "Sir, we've lost the cruiser Blood Moon," reported his tactical officer. "That's 60 ships destroyed in 30 minutes. Vex watched another squadron of his vessels disappear in brilliant flashes of blue light. The human weapons didn't create explosions like normal space combat. Instead, they seemed to unravel matter itself, turning proud warships into expanding clouds of glowing particles. "How are they doing this?" Vex demanded. "No species has phase technology this advanced." His science officer looked up from her instruments, with fear in her eyes. "War Admiral, I'm detecting quantum signatures I've never seen before. Their ships exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They can choose when and where to interact with our reality." The truth was becoming clear to Vex. The Hegemony had made a terrible mistake. The humans they thought were weak prey had been hiding their true strength. These weren't the primitive patrol ships that the galaxy knew about. This was Earth's real military power, and it was beyond anything the Hegemony had ever faced. Captain James Cole stood on the bridge of the HMS Defiant, watching the tactical display with professional satisfaction. His ship had absorbed the entire planetary bombardment without even straining its shields. Now they were systematically dismantling the enemy fleet with surgical precision. "Target the command ship," Cole ordered his weapons officer. "War Admiral Vex needs to understand his situation." The Defiant phased into normal space directly above Vex's flagship. The massive human vessel dwarfed the alien command ship, its weapons trained on vital systems. Cole opened a direct communication channel. "War Admiral Vex, this is Captain Cole. Your fleet is finished. Order your remaining ships to surrender, and we will allow them to leave this system." Vex stared at the human ship hanging over his vessel like a sword of judgment. Up close, he could see details that made his blood run cold. The human ship's hull was covered in weapons he couldn't identify. Strange energy patterns flowed across its surface like living lightning. "Captain Cole," Vex replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "You may have surprised us, but we still outnumber you. This battle is far from over." Cole's response was calm and patient, like a teacher explaining something to a slow student. "Admiral, you arrived here with 300 ships. You currently have 112 vessels still operational. In the time we've been talking, that number has dropped to 108. Vex looked at his fleet status display and saw the truth. His ships were dying faster than he could count them. The humans were picking them off with mechanical efficiency, showing no emotion or hesitation. "Your weapons cannot penetrate our defenses," Cole continued. "Your ships cannot escape our attack patterns. You have two choices: surrender and live, or continue fighting and die. I recommend surrender." On the planet's surface, the colonists watched the battle unfold in amazement. Governor Reed stood in the command center, surrounded by his staff as they monitored the space combat. The sky above them was filled with falling debris as alien ships continued to explode. "Sir," Lieutenant Baker reported, "we're receiving transmissions from across the colony. People are coming out of their shelters. They want to see the battle." Reed understood the feeling. After hours of expecting death from above, the colonists were witnessing their salvation. Earth's fleet was destroying the Hegemony Armada with such ease that it seemed almost unreal. Admiral Sarah Hawks appeared on the main communication screen again. Behind her, Reed could see the bridge of her flagship, a space filled with advanced technology and efficient crew members working at their stations. "Governor Reed, how are your people holding up?" Hawks asked. "Admiral, we're amazed," Reed replied honestly. "How is this possible? Where did this fleet come from?" Hawks smiled, but there was no humor in her expression. "Governor, what you're seeing tonight is the result of 50 years of preparation. Earth has been ready for this kind of war since we first met hostile aliens. We just chose not to advertise our capabilities." Reed thought about the implications. "You mean the Terran Federation has been hiding its true military strength?" "Not hiding, Governor. Waiting. We knew that someday, a species like the Hegemony would threaten human colonies. We wanted them to make the first move, to show the galaxy their true nature. Now everyone will see what happens when predators target Earth's children." Back in space, the battle was reaching its conclusion. War Admiral Vex had watched his fleet shrink to less than 50 ships. His remaining captains were begging for permission to retreat, and several vessels had already broken formation to flee. Human ships continued their methodical destruction. They moved with perfect coordination, each vessel knowing exactly where the others would be. Their attack patterns flowed like water on Hegemony defenses, always striking where the enemy was weakest. Vex made a desperate decision. If he was going to die here, he would take some humans with him. "All remaining ships," he broadcast, ramming speed. "Target the largest human vessels. We'll show them that the Hegemony doesn't surrender." 23 alien ships turned toward the human fleet, their engines burning at maximum power. They accelerated toward the massive Earth vessels, hoping to destroy them through sheer sacrifice and determination. The human response was immediate and devastating. Point defense systems activated across the fleet, filling space with streams of energy that moved faster than thought. The kamikaze ships never came close to their targets. They were vaporized while still thousands of kilometers away, their sacrifice achieving nothing. Captain Cole watched the suicide attack fail with professional detachment. "All ships, prepare for final assault. Let's finish this." The remaining Hegemony vessels tried to scatter, but it was too late. Human ships appeared around each fleeing vessel, cutting off escape routes and delivering killing blows. Within minutes, the space around New Eden Colony was empty except for debris and the triumphant Earth fleet. Vex's flagship was the last to die. As his ship's systems failed around him, he sent one final transmission toward Hegemony space. "Council of Species, this is War Admiral Vex. The humans are not what we thought. They have weapons beyond our understanding. They have ships that phase through reality itself. Do not engage them. Do not threaten their colonies. The humans are the apex predators of this galaxy. The transmission ended as his ship joined the wreckage floating in space. Admiral Sarah Hawks stood in the command center of her flagship, watching the last pieces of hegemony wreckage burn up in New Eden's atmosphere. The space battle was over, but the war was just beginning. She turned to her communications officer with cold determination in her eyes. Send a message to Earth Command. Request authorization for Deep Strike Protocol. The bridge fell silent. Every officer knew what Deep Strike meant. It wasn't just about defending human colonies anymore. It was about hunting down the enemy wherever they lived and making them pay for their crimes. Admiral, her tactical officer said carefully, Deep Strike hasn't been used since the Proxima incident. Are you sure about this? Hawks looked at the tactical display showing New Eden colony below them. 12,000 innocent people had almost died tonight because aliens thought humans were easy targets. She thought about the 40,000 citizens of New Haven who would have been vaporized if Earth's fleet had arrived even 10 minutes later. I'm very sure, Commander. The hegemony declared war on us when they threatened our civilians. Now they get to learn what war with humanity really means. The response from Earth came within hours. 3 simple words that would change the balance of power in the galaxy. Protocol authorized, hunt. Across human space, the real fleet began to move. Ships that had been hidden in asteroid belts and behind dead moons powered up their engines. Vessels that existed only in classified military files phased into normal space. The galaxy was about to discover that Earth's defensive fleet was just the beginning. Captain James Cole received his new orders while orbiting New Eden. His ship, the HMS Defiant, would lead the first strike team deep into hegemony territory. Their target was the Keth system, home to one of the 4 species that made up the alien alliance. Sir, his navigator reported, we have phase coordinates for the Keth homeworld. Travel time at maximum phase speed is 6 hours. Cole studied the tactical information about their target. The Keth were one of the founding members of the hegemony, responsible for enslaving dozens of worlds. Their homeworld was heavily defended with orbital platforms and a fleet of 200 warships. All ships prepare for phase jump, Cole ordered. We're going to show the Keth what happens when you threaten human children. The strike force consisted of 12 human vessels, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy entire fleets. They disappeared from normal space in flashes of blue light, traveling through dimensions that most species didn't even know existed. 6 hours later, they emerged above Keth Prime, the heavily fortified capital world of a species that had never known defeat on their home ground. The planet's defense systems immediately went to full alert, but their targeting computers couldn't lock onto the phasing human ships. Admiral Krath, commander of the Keth home fleet, stared at his sensors in confusion. The readings showed 12 contacts that flickered in and out of existence like ghosts. His science officers were reporting impossible energy signatures that defied all known physics. Unknown vessels, Krath broadcast. You are in violation of Keth territorial space. Identify yourselves immediately or be destroyed. Captain Cole's response was broadcast on all frequencies across the planet. Every Keth citizen, from the highest government officials to the lowest workers, heard his words clearly. People of Keth Prime, this is Captain James Cole of the Terran Defense Fleet. Your government has committed acts of war against human civilians. Your fleet participated in an unprovoked attack on innocent colonists. We are here to collect payment for those crimes. Krath ordered his entire fleet to attack the human vessels. 200 Keth warships opened fire simultaneously, filling space with enough energy to melt continents. The humans simply phased out of normal space, letting the massive barrage pass harmlessly through empty vacuum. Then the retaliation began. Human ships appeared throughout the Keth formation, their weapons targeting specific systems with surgical precision. They didn't destroy the alien vessels outright. Instead, they disabled engines, weapons, and life support systems, leaving the crews helpless but alive. "This is a demonstration," Cole announced as Kef ships began drifting powerless through space. "Your fleet cannot protect you. Your weapons cannot harm us. Your defenses are meaningless against Earth's technology." On the planet's surface, panic spread through the major cities. The Kef had ruled their section of space for over a century, conquering weaker species and taking their resources. Now they faced an enemy that treated their mighty fleet like children playing with toys. The human strike force moved to the next phase of their mission. They deployed assault teams to the planet's surface, targeting government buildings and military installations. The Kef ground forces tried to resist, but human soldiers moved through their defenses like they weren't even there. Major Lisa Park led one of the assault teams into the Capitol building where the Kef High Council was meeting an emergency session. Her soldiers wore armor that made them nearly invisible and carried weapons that could cut through any material known to exist. "Members of the Kef High Council," Major Park announced as her team secured the building, "you are under arrest for crimes against humanity. You will be transported to a neutral world to face trial for your part in the attack on New Eden Colony." The Kef leaders tried to protest, claiming diplomatic immunity and demanding to speak with their fleet commanders. Park informed them that their fleet was currently floating helpless in orbit and that Earth didn't recognize the authority of governments that enslaved innocent people. Similar scenes played out across hegemony space. Human strike teams appeared, without warning, on dozens of worlds, targeting the leadership and military infrastructure of species that had thought themselves untouchable. The aliens discovered that their defensive networks meant nothing against an enemy that could phase through solid matter. War Admiral Zex, one of the few hegemony commanders to survive the New Eden battle, found himself hunted across 3 star systems. Every time he thought he had found a safe haven, human ships would appear as if summoned from another dimension. His ship, the Pride of Conquest, had been running for days when the humans finally cornered him in the Outer Rim territories. "Captain," Cole's voice came over the communication system with the patience of a teacher explaining a simple lesson. "Admiral Zex, you participated in an attack on defenseless civilians. You ordered the bombardment of a city filled with families and children. Did you think there would be no consequences for such actions?" Zex tried to negotiate, offering information about hegemony military secrets in exchange for his life. Cole listened to the proposals with obvious disinterest. "Admiral, you seem to misunderstand the situation. This isn't a negotiation. This is justice. You threatened our people, so now you get to experience what it feels like to be hunted." The chase continued for another week before Zex's ship finally ran out of fuel in an empty system. Human vessels surrounded him, their weapons trained on his helpless craft. For the first time in his military career, the proud hegemony commander knew what it felt like to be completely powerless. Across the galaxy, other species watched the systematic dismantling of hegemony power with growing amazement and fear. The humans weren't just defending themselves. They were methodically hunting down everyone who had participated in the attack on their colony. The predators had become prey, and Earth's warriors were very patient hunters. 3 months after the first shots were fired over New Eden Colony, the galaxy had changed forever. The hegemony, once the most feared military alliance in known space, no longer existed as a fighting force. Their fleets were scattered wreckage, their leaders either dead or hiding in the deepest corners of space. Governor Marcus Reed stood in his rebuilt office, looking out over New Eden Colony as construction crews worked to repair the minor damage from falling debris. Children played in the streets again, their laughter carrying on the morning breeze. The colonists had returned to their normal lives, but everyone knew they were no longer alone on the frontier. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission. Admiral Sarah Hawks appeared on Reed's communication screen, her uniform crisp and her expression calm. Behind her, Reed could see the bridge of her flagship, still in orbit above the colony. "Governor Reed, I wanted to inform you personally about the latest developments in our campaign against the hegemony remnants." Reed settled into his chair, always interested in hearing about the war that had started above his world. "What's the situation, Admiral?" "The last organized hegemony stronghold fell yesterday," Hawks reported. "The Vrex homeworld surrendered after our forces disabled their orbital defenses. That completes the destruction of all 4 founding species' military capabilities." Reed thought about what that meant. In just 3 months, humanity had dismantled an empire that had terrorized the galaxy for decades. The speed and efficiency of Earth's victory was almost beyond belief. "What about the slave worlds?" Reed asked. "The planets the hegemony conquered?" Hawks smiled, and for the first time since Reed had met her, it reached her eyes. "That's the best news of all, Governor. Every enslaved population has been liberated. We've established defense agreements with 47 species that were under hegemony control. They're all free now." The liberation of the slave worlds had been the most rewarding part of Earth's campaign. Human Marines had arrived on planet after planet to find populations that had given up hope of ever seeing freedom again. The joy on alien faces when they realized their oppressors were gone forever was something the human soldiers would never forget. Captain James Cole had personally led the liberation of Zephyr Prime, a mining world where the hegemony had worked 3 different species to near extinction. When his troops arrived, they found aliens who could barely remember what life was like before the conquest. An elderly alien named Elder Kryn had approached Cole with tears in his ancient eyes. "Are you truly here to free us? Or is this some new form of torment?" Cole had knelt beside the old being, his voice gentle but certain. "Elder Kryn, the hegemony will never hurt your people again. Earth guarantees it. You are free, and you will stay free." The liberation forces had brought medical supplies, food, and hope to worlds that had forgotten such things existed. Human engineers worked alongside freed slaves to rebuild damaged infrastructure. Human doctors treated injuries and diseases that had gone untreated for years under hegemony rule. On the former hegemony capital world of Nexus Prime, the scene was very different. The massive government buildings stood empty, their halls no longer echoing with the commands of tyrants. The hegemony council chamber, where decisions had been made to enslave entire species, was now being converted into a memorial for the victims of their crimes. Major Lisa Park walked through the abandoned corridors with a team of historians, documenting the evidence of hegemony atrocities. The records they found painted a picture of systematic cruelty that stretched back over a century. "Major," called Sergeant Tom Miller from across the hall, "you need to see this." Park joined him at a massive data terminal that still contained active files. The screen showed detailed plans for the conquest of human space, including specific orders to capture Earth's children for use as laboratory subjects. "They were planning to experiment on our kids," Miller said quietly. Park stared at the files. For a long moment, feeling a cold anger settle in her chest. "Make sure copies of everything here reach Earth Command. The galaxy needs to know what we stopped." Back on New Eden Colony, Reed received another visitor, Dr. Sarah Mills. The colony's chief medical officer entered his office with a thoughtful expression on her face. "Marcus, I've been thinking about what happened here," she said, taking a seat across from his desk. 3 months ago, we thought we were going to die. We believed nobody was coming to save us." Reed nodded, remembering those desperate hours when the hegemony deadline approached. "It felt like we were completely alone out here." "But we weren't alone," Mills continued. "Earth was watching over us the entire time. They had ships ready to defend us before we even knew we were in danger." The truth about Earth's preparedness was still sinking in across human space. The Terran Federation hadn't just built a defensive fleet. They had created a military force capable of projecting power across the entire galaxy. More importantly, they had the will to use that power to protect innocent life. Reed thought about the children playing outside his window. Dr. Mills, do you think other species will try to attack human colonies now that they know what we're capable of? Mills smiled and shook her head. Marcus, I think the opposite will happen. Species across the galaxy are asking for Earth's protection. We're not just defending human colonies anymore. We're becoming the guardians of everyone who can't defend themselves. She was right. Requests for defense agreements were flooding into Earth Command from species that had lived in fear of larger neighbors. The galaxy had learned that humanity didn't just defend its own people. They protected anyone who asked for help and deserved it. Admiral Hawks was dealing with the diplomatic consequences of Earth's sudden emergence as a galactic superpower. The Galactic Council, which had barely acknowledged humanity's existence before the war, was now desperate to establish formal relations with the Terran Federation. Ambassador David Chun, Earth's representative to the Council, found himself in the unusual position of having every major species requesting meetings. The same aliens who had dismissed humans as irrelevant now wanted to discuss trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. Ambassador, said Council Speaker Thaises of the Altarian Republic, the Council wishes to formally apologize for our previous oversight regarding humanity's capabilities. Chun smiled politely but kept his voice neutral. Speaker Thaises, Earth is always willing to discuss peaceful cooperation with species that share our values. However, we will not tolerate any threats against innocent populations under our protection. The message was clear. Earth would be a friend to those who acted with honor, but they would be an implacable enemy to anyone who preyed on the weak dot in the depths of space. Automated beacons deployed by Earth's fleet broadcast a simple message. To every inhabited world in the galaxy, to all civilizations receiving this transmission, you are not alone. The Terran Federation watches over this galaxy. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. We will not tolerate the strong preying upon the weak. For those who would harm innocent lives, we are coming. We are patient. We are inevitable. The age of predatory empires was over. Humanity had taken its place as the guardian of galactic civilization.